By the late 19th century, the British Empire had entered a new phase of control. Military conquest had largely ended. Major rebellions had been crushed. Authority was now maintained not primarily through constant force, but through systems that shaped daily life. Among the most important of these systems were railways, roads, and telegraph networks. Together, they formed the physical and administrative backbone of imperial rule. Before British expansion, India was governed through regional power centers. Communication was slow. Travel was limited by geography. Local rulers exercised real authority because distance weakened centralized control. These conditions had historically prevented any single power from dominating the entire subcontinent for long periods. British rule changed this permanently. The first railway line in India opened in 1853, running a short distance from Bombay to Thane. At the time, it was presented as an experiment in modernization. After the transfer of power from the East India Company to the British Crown in 1858, railway expansion became a strategic priority. Over the following decades, tens of thousands of kilometers of track were laid across India, creating one of the largest railway networks in the world. The structure of this network revealed its purpose. Railway lines were designed to connect interior regions to ports. Cotton-producing areas were linked directly to shipping centers. Coal and mineral zones were connected to industrial supply routes. Agricultural regions were tied into export systems. Connections between local markets were secondary. The railway system was shaped around imperial trade and administration rather than local economic development. Military considerations played a central role. Railways allowed British troops to move rapidly across vast distances. Where earlier empires had struggled to respond quickly to unrest, British forces could now be deployed within days. Cantonments, administrative capitals, and strategic locations were deliberately integrated into the network. The empire gained the ability to project power efficiently across its territories. Telegraph networks reinforced this control. Before telegraph lines, communication across India could take weeks. Governors and commanders often acted independently because instructions traveled slowly. As telegraph lines expanded, communication became instantaneous. Orders from London or the Viceroy could be transmitted immediately. Military commands, intelligence updates, and administrative directives flowed continuously across imperial networks. This transformation centralized authority. Decisions affecting millions of people were now made quickly and enforced without delay. Local discretion diminished. Imperial coordination increased. Power became more distant, but more precise. Road construction supported the same objectives. Many roads built during this period were designed to serve military and administrative needs. They connected railway stations to cantonments, government offices, and supply depots. Roads expanded the physical presence of the state into regions that had previously been difficult to access. Enforcement of law, taxation, and policy became easier. Economically, infrastructure reshaped India's relationship with the global system. Railways and roads integrated India tightly into imperial trade networks. Raw materials moved outward in greater volume and at lower cost. Finished goods produced in Britain flowed inward. Indian industries, already weakened by earlier policies, faced increasing competition and decline. The financing of this infrastructure reflected imperial priorities. Much of the cost was borne by Indian revenues. Taxes collected from Indian populations funded railway construction and maintenance. At the same time, profits from railway operations were often guaranteed to British investors, ensuring returns regardless of performance. Financial risk remained local, while financial reward flowed outward. Infrastructure also affected food distribution. Railways made it possible to transport grain quickly across long distances. This capacity could have supported relief during shortages. Instead, movement followed market incentives. Grain was transported toward ports and export markets when prices were favorable. During periods of scarcity, food often continued to leave affected regions. The system functioned efficiently, but without regard for social need. British administrators defended infrastructure policy by emphasizing order, efficiency, and productivity. Statistics were used to demonstrate increased trade, faster communication, and improved administration. These measurements became central to the empire's justification of rule. At the social level, infrastructure altered patterns of movement and interaction. Railways brought people from different regions into shared spaces. Travel became more common. Information spread more rapidly. Newspapers circulated further. These changes reshaped Indian society in ways not fully anticipated by imperial planners. At the same time, surveillance expanded. Faster communication allowed authorities to monitor activity more closely. Political gatherings, movements, and correspondence became easier to track. Infrastructure facilitated both connection and control. By this stage, British authority no longer relied primarily on visible force. Control was embedded in systems that regulated movement, communication, and trade. Railways determined where goods traveled. Telegraphs determined how information flowed. Roads determined access to power. The empire increasingly governed through logistics. British officials viewed these systems as permanent achievements. Railways, roads, and communication networks were visible legacies of rule. They became central to the claim that the empire had transformed and modernized its territories. Yet these systems were not neutral. They reflected the priorities of imperial administration. Infrastructure served extraction, coordination, and security first. Social benefit remained secondary and conditional. By the late 19th century, the British Empire had perfected structural control. Authority was maintained through interconnected systems that shaped everyday life. Power no longer needed constant demonstration. It operated quietly through schedules, routes, wires, and regulations. This phase marked the consolidation of British rule through modern infrastructure. Railways, roads, and telegraphs ensured that imperial authority could be exercised efficiently over vast territories with limited personnel. They reduced reliance on force while strengthening control. The empire had moved from conquest to management. Control had become systemic, embedded in the physical and administrative framework of colonial rule.